So you said you got an MBA, right?
Yep.
How do you feel like this is kind of an open question. How do you feel like that affected your career? Like, do you think it helped?
Yeah, good question. And I think depending on who you talk to, you'll get a different response. My personal opinion, I think it did help. My undergraduate degree was in economics, so I didn't necessarily have formal business school training, where I took finance classes, accounting classes. And so one of the reasons I wanted to go back to get my MBA was to get that more formalized training and knowledge.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it helps. And most people, I recommend do it. If you can, try to get your company to pay for it. There are still companies out there that do that. But yes, I think it helped.
So what was the shift like from going from an undergraduate school to like a business school? Like, is it really that different, or is it formatted the same?
Yeah, I think it is a little bit different, mostly because the people that are in graduate school are there for a purpose and usually there for a reason. Undergrad has become kind of table stakes, and we can talk about what happens after what we're going through right now. But my family was a family that always encouraged education and always encouraged doing the undergrad, and that was always expected. Whether you wanted to do a graduate degree or not was really up to you. And most people who are paying to leave a job where they may already be making money to go back to school for another 2 years, 3 years, and get a master's or a secondary degree just have different motivations. And so the people you interact with have different motivations, different backgrounds, different skill sets. And so from that standpoint, I think people just have a different mindset than what we had in undergrad. The workload was similar, although condensed, because what you try to do, and at least for an MBA program, is you try to condense, call it 3 years of what you'd see in an undergraduate school program into, really 3 semesters. So from that standpoint, the workload can be a little bit more intense.
So Scott, last night when you and I were talking on the phone, you had told me that your education clients are in a really interesting position and how they foresee the future. What are you dealing with right now, and what are some of the things you're hearing?
Yeah, it's pretty wild, to say the least. I mean, like, nobody has ever lived through a global pandemic here, and many of the people that are working at universities on the administrative side have never lived through a time period like this. It's a very fluid situation, so things change literally day to day. But a lot of our university clients and colleges that we work with, quite frankly, are worried about what attendance looks like in the fall. Hopefully we're able to get the pandemic under control. It looks like we're doing all that we can and trying to open up the economy a little bit, and hopefully make schools a safe environment for students, and so that they can return to campus in the fall. But a lot of our universities and colleges are worried if people pull out, if they don't pay tuition, if they don't pay full freight on tuition, how are they going to meet whatever their costs and expenses might be for the year? Because regardless of whether or not students come to campus or pay tuition, you still have teachers that you have to employ, staff you have to employ that help maintain the school. In certain situations, there are hospitals associated with a number of universities, and there are various costs associated with keeping that hospital up and running. It's particularly interesting when you have a situation that you have right now, where you have elective surgery for the knee scoped or have plastic surgery done. They can't really do that right now. And those are lucrative revenues for many hospitals. So it's interesting times. It's a very fluid situation. We at our firm are obviously here to support them on a day-to-day basis and help them through whatever challenges that they might incur over the next, call it, 6 months. But it's pretty scary times.
And you had also said that I hadn't thought about it. We didn't talk about that last night. I hadn't thought about that. You had also said that they're worried about athletics in the fall.
They are, yeah. If you think about some of the Power Five conferences, sports is a huge revenue base for
Right.
them. Huge. Think about the number of people that fill the big house every Saturday up in Michigan.
Yeah.
The way it's looking right now, that's not going to happen, at least in the fall. If it does, it's unlikely there'll be a fan base there. I think the most likely scenario is that you see it pushed to the spring, but that still blows up schools' budgets for 2020 and how they're going to handle, again, meeting costs associated with the school, as well as costs associated with other sports programs too, right? So
Right.
it's athletic department that a lot of those sports and the revenue from those sports help feed and support other sports as well. So it's pretty wild.
So do the majority of schools, the endowment is never really a rainy day fund. It is more of a working fund. I mean, you hear about schools with $1 billion endowment and you're like, hey, so you have one bad year. What's the big deal?
Yeah, I mean, the endowment can be set up for multiple purposes, right? Depends on the mission. A lot of people view endowments as a way to use the investment income that comes off those investments to help support research and development at the school, help fill professorial vacancies, help attract talent to the school, help support some operating costs, but not a ton, right? The assumption is that the school will continue to operate,
Got it.
with at least some sort of form of revenue coming from tuition. And the other piece, some people use it as a way to help support scholarships for students that
Right.
that need assistance. And so, something we're watching pretty closely, and I know a number of our university clients are watching closely, is how do they help support that? Is there going to be enough cash there to help support students that need that additional assistance to help pay for tuition to the extent they are able to and want to come to campus in the fall? And you bake in usually a certain percentage of the endowment to help support those causes anyway in any given year. But whatever
Right.
that number you've baked in this year, you've blown through it. I mean,
Okay.
you're 5-6 standard deviations away from whatever your expectation was.
So when choosing your career or what you want to do, has this been like has this been like a goal that you've had for a long time, or have you had to change a lot before you knew what you're going into?
Yeah, so I've definitely changed. So when I came out of school in 2004, I went to work for an investment bank in New York that is now part of JP Morgan. The firm did not survive the global financial crisis. I left before just because I didn't enjoy what I was doing that much and wanted to move on to other interests. Yeah, so I worked in a sales and trading hybrid investment banking role with a firm called Bear Stearns and Company. We worked on structured products, which I'm not going to bore you with the background on, but they were time sensitive investments that we would sell to institutional clients that required a tremendous amount of work to get out the door every month. And so we worked roughly 100 hours a week. There are certain weeks I definitely worked 6 days a week. Some weeks I worked 7 days a week and would go into the office on Saturdays and Sundays. It was tough. We had an air mattress under my desk so that I could sleep a couple of hours if I just wanted to sleep while I was waiting for attorneys or accountants to send me back comments or to hear back from potential investors. So I was 22 to 25 at the time when I was there. It was a great experience. I learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about what I could handle. And to some extent, I think you're trained by that just from doing swimming. Swimming is a tremendous amount of time commitment, right? I mean, it's 10 plus practices a week sometimes with weights and dry land. So it's a lot of work and takes time commitment and takes time management skills. My entry level job on Wall Street was that probably time and a half, but it was more mentally exhausting. But long story short, it was a great experience. I'm happy I did it. My wife now was actually in my analyst class there. That's where she and I met. She had the desk in front of me, the cubicle in front of me. So it was a great experience, one that I'd never want to do again. Yeah, so that answers the investment banking role. So yeah, look, I left in 06 because I didn't want to do sales and trading investment banking anymore. I was tired of living in Manhattan. I wanted to see the sun. I wanted to come back to the Midwest. So I left, I came back, started applying for business schools, was fortunate enough to work with Andy and his staff too, for a year, which was awesome. It's a great experience. And applied for business schools, went down to Bloomington with the goal of one, getting my MBA, and two, getting a job that was a little bit more focused on private investments. Always knew I wanted to do more investment management, less investment banking. And so focused my studies and focused my networking for job opportunities on those skills and on that background. And so when I graduated in 09, which was in the depths of the global financial crisis, like half of my graduating class probably had jobs. My girlfriend, who's now my wife, had a great opportunity to go and work for Ethicon Endosurgery in Cincinnati, which is a Johnson & Johnson subsidiary. And so we knew we were going to move to Cincinnati after we graduated. And I started looking for jobs in Cincinnati with the goal of trying to find something focused on private investments and focused on investment management. And so I networked. I called anybody and everybody I could. I met them for a cup of coffee. I asked them to give me 3 names when I would meet them, and I'd go meet those 3 people. Anybody who would listen to me for 15, 20 minutes, I just went and met with. Because it's a small community and it wasn't too hard to network around, but you still needed to do the other work. And so after like 2 or 3 months of doing that, I finally got an opportunity to go and work for the private investment team at an insurance company. And so that's where my second career really kind of took off. We started doing private investments on behalf of the insurance company, as well as on behalf of a small private equity fund that we managed. And spent a little more than 3 years with them before my wife and I welcomed our first child, and then started looking for opportunities to get back to the Indianapolis area, where I had family that could help us raise our family. And so after being with the insurance company for 3 years, we moved to Indianapolis, and I took a job with a consulting firm, which is where I am now and have been for 8.5 years.
Maybe you can define, I guess, maybe private investment just a tiny bit more.
Yeah.
Give an example.
Yeah. So you split the world into 2 different buckets. You have public investments. So if you think about like Apple, Facebook, General Electric, those are all publicly traded stocks that I can go buy on the stock market. I don't do any of that. I help support firms that go out and buy ownership of family-owned businesses. So if you think about a small HVAC business, a heating and cooling business, or a small independent grocery store chain. I think many of you probably remember, maybe you do, maybe you don't, remember the name Marsh here in town. It used to be a grocery store chain. There was a private equity entity that owned a piece of Marsh. And so we didn't have exposure, but that's the kind of investment that we would do. We would buy in and buy ownership stakes of a small family-owned business that is either looking for a partner to help grow and execute a value creation plan or a strategic plan to help grow earnings and grow revenue and grow the business. Or you have a situation where a founder is retiring and they don't have a generational transition plan and they just want to sell their business. And so that's where firms like ours and firms like the groups that we support can be of assistance.